I know. All right, if I could have everybody's attention, please. So we'll get going in just a minute. One note for the audience. What we're working off of tonight is just 2 microphones. I'll explain this again when the tape is rolling. But it's kind of a difficulty. The microphones will pick up everybody at the table, but they'll also pick up noise from the crowd. So if you could just refrain from making any noise at all. I hate to make this sound like one of those presidential debates in any way, shape, or form. But if you could just refrain from making any noise while the candidates are up here, it'll just save us a lot of time and it'll be better for the TV feed. So with that, should we get going? I'm very good. Alrighty. Well, welcome everyone to this candidates forum. We have several important races on the ballot in November. And we have many of the candidates here tonight to share their views and to answer some questions. But first, if everybody could please rise and we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Sean Keeley. I'm the Hanson Town moderator, and I was pressed into service for tonight's town forum. What we'll have, I've discussed the rules with each of the candidates. We have a 3-minute opening, a 1-minute closing. We'll take questions from the audience. Any question directed at one candidate, the other candidate will have an opportunity to address that question as well. It's a forum, not a debate, so we won't have questions going from one candidate to the other, but hopefully through your questions, we'll learn a little bit more about them. If you ask a question, if you could please stand, if you're able to. If you're not able to, that's fine. But please stand and state your name and your address. Again, that helps us with the audio for the television feed. We're going to have everybody answer. Again, there's no time limit on the questions or the answers, but I'll use my discretion to step in if somebody's trying to filibuster one way or the other. We're really under some tight time constraints tonight. We have a bunch of elections to get, or races to get to. What we're going to try and shoot for is about 25-30 minutes for each office. So hopefully everybody will be heard and have a chance to address the questions. And again, the microphone, just to reiterate, we had some technical difficulties. Once we're not going to move this microphone. There's a microphone on the camera as well. I've been assured that everybody sitting at this table will be heard loud and clear as long as they're loud and clear. So with that, we'll get going, and we are going to start with the congressional race for the 9th District, and Congressman Keating has sent a statement to be read by Jim Egan from Hanson. So Mr. Egan? Where is Mr. Egan? Here he is. Just somebody here. Oh, it's been a while.
Good afternoon, folks. While I regret that I cannot be with you in person today to discuss my reasons for seeking re-election, I am grateful for this opportunity to highlight some of my top priorities going forward. It has been my privilege to serve you as your congressman. I humbly ask for your vote on November 8th so that I may continue to represent you. As a member of the U.S. House of Representatives, I am faced with a multitude of issues, only a few of which I will touch upon today. It is vital that we support the education and training of our next generation's workforce. To this end, I have secured over $10 million in federal funding in the last 2 years alone for vocational training, apprenticeship, Head Start, and youth building funding. These jobs of tomorrow will be represented in both emerging and historic industries. I have promoted cranberry exports in the new global markets and stood up to misguided regulations that would harm small cranberry growers and work to support our fishing industry. My colleagues in the state legislature, especially State Representative Josh Cutler and State Senator Mike Brady, have led the way in strengthening our state's role in the fight against the opioid epidemic. In the U.S. House, the response to this crisis has been bipartisan and effective. Our successes have included new laws that will reduce the availability of unused prescription drugs in households and educate prescribers on best practices for chronic pain management. I am proud sponsor of legislation that will strengthen Social Security for future generations. Through my position on the House Homeland Security Committee and as the lead Democrat on Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Terrorism, I have worked to bolster our national security and keep our citizens safe, both at home and abroad. My work to highlight airport security weaknesses led to a first-of-its-kind, top-to-bottom review of all U.S. airports with a TSA presence and passage of my legislation to seal gaps in perimeter and access control security. Again, these are just a few of my efforts towards strengthening our economy, from the needs of future workers to those of our retirees. I look forward to the opportunity to serve the residents of Hanson and the 9th District as your congressman in the coming years. Thank you again for the opportunity to share this information. Thank you.
At this time, if there's a representative from any of the other congressional campaigns and they would like to be heard, we can accommodate them now. Anybody? All right, great. And according to the agreement ahead of time, there's no questions for people reading statements, just for the candidates themselves. Next, we have one candidate for state senate, and that is Mike Brady, and he's here tonight. Mr. Brady.
Thank you. Thank you, and I want to thank you for inviting me to speak tonight. I am fortunate I do not have an opponent this coming election, but it wouldn't be without the support of a lot of people in this room, and I want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart, people from the town of Hanson and the surrounding communities. And we're working very diligently, and we have worked at the state level. I served over 7.5 years as a state representative. Prior to that, many years on the city council in Brockton, and I'm serving my first term on the state senate, due to the untimely passing of our good friend and great advocate, Thomas Kennedy. And it's bittersweet that that seat opened up like it did, but I have to continue to do the work that he forged forward and continue to do the work for our communities. And as was mentioned earlier with our congressman's statement, we have worked very diligently on bipartisan legislation to address this opiate addiction crisis. When I was knocking on doors in the town of Hanson and many other communities I represent, one of the #1 issues was the opiate addiction crisis. And too many families have been lost, and young people. And it doesn't matter if you're from very affluent communities such as Duxbury or other communities such as that, or from cities like Brockton and New Bedford and Fall River, it's affecting too many families. I lost a cousin's son in the town of Rockland, where the boy's body was found in Abington. And Abington, ironically, is one of the highest percentage rates for opiate addictions in the whole south shore of Plymouth County, even though the numbers are greater in the cities, but the percentages are higher in some of these small communities. So we passed legislation several years ago to address this, and I want to thank my good friend Josh Cutler, who worked with us when we were in the House of Representatives in the state level, and we've passed some legislation this year in bipartisan support with Democrats and Republicans alike, working together to get this done, and with the governor's support. So that's the tremendous good news, but we still have to work harder. I filed the bill when I was in the House because the insurance companies only allow 14 days in a rehab, which is ridiculous. Because of revolving door and the recidivism, we've seen time and time again our firefighters going and reviving the same bodies time and time again, 3 times in the same day. And these kids, again, I call them kids, but they're in their 30s and so forth, that they're out back in the streets, not getting enough help, not getting enough services. So I filed the bill to expand that to 30 days, and I know John Keenan in the Senate, before I became a senator, filed a similar bill, and we're working on that. But the insurance companies, they have lobbyists like everyone else, and they're pushing back on it. So we're working together on this. Funding for our district, I was able to get some funding for Camp Kiwani, and funding, again, working with our representative locally here, Josh Cutler, for our school funding, because the school disparity funding wasn't equal, and he's done a tremendous job in this community as well, and I want to thank him. But we also have to get more money for the Monpont watershed that necessarily may not be the town of Hanson, but it affects everybody in this area. And I was able to get some funding in that in the budget, and the governor was supportive of that as well. But unfortunately, funding is difficult at the state level, and unlike the federal government, we have to balance the budget. And we're not having a spending problem, we have a revenue problem. We need to find ways to bring more revenue into the Commonwealth so we can get money back to the cities and towns to support these things. So a lot of these things we put forth are now on hold because we have to balance the budget. But the good news is we are working together across the board with bipartisan legislation, bipartisan leadership, with both Republicans and Democrats to get this work done. I will continue to do that work. And we're getting a lot more things done here locally than unfortunately we see in Washington. Our local congressional delegation from Massachusetts, John Keating and the rest of the crew do a tremendous job, but we don't see that in the rest of the country. And unfortunately, that's why we see the types of misinformation ads that are going out there. And the one other thing that I want to state is there is an important ballot question on the ballot this coming November about the expansion of charter schools and whether people are in favor of charter schools or against charter schools. There is still a window to put more charter schools in the Commonwealth as it stands. But right now, some of the proposals out there, like one that was proposed in Brockton with the community of Taunton and Randolph, is going to take $10 million out of the budget next year. That's going to be devastating for the budget. And how many of the communities are going to get hurt by this? So don't believe the misinformation. It is public dollars coming out of our taxpayers' pockets to support this question. And there's a lot of outside money. I was honored to be the chairman of the Elections Commission this year, and we passed some legislation to have the top 5 donors be exposed. So all this outside money that tries to buy elections in the Commonwealth, these companies can now be exposed. And I'm also on the Veterans Committee. And we've done tremendous bipartisan legislation to support our veterans, which we can never do enough for. And Massachusetts is #1 in the country for support of our veterans. We passed the Welcome Home Bill, the other acts, and we just expanded a life insurance benefit for veterans. So I don't want to take up all your time because I can go on all night and you'll never get rid of me. But I want to thank you for your time. I know we have important elections and there's important races here, so thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much.
And I'll leave some cards here if anybody needs to get a hold of me. I'm always available. Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Senator, do you want to sit back down?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, certainly, if you have a question. Could you please stand and state your name and your address, please?
Bruce Young, 594 Indian Head Street, Hanson. Just a question on what you said. I know Brockton has been in the news, and you represent Brockton.
Yes.
And there was in the news recently, was that Brockton was, there were members of the city council who wanted Brockton to become a sanctuary city. How do you stand on cities or towns in the Commonwealth who wish to become sanctuary cities and give sanctuary for illegal immigrants in the city? Where do you stand on that issue? And should state funds be withheld from those cities who take that role as a sanctuary city?
No, see, that proposal that was proposed is by a city councilor, and it necessarily wasn't a sanctuary city. It's a different term he's using, but I don't support what he's trying to do. If some communities want to become sanctuary cities, that's up to them, like Boston has, and there's been some other cities. But what he's proposing, I don't agree with. And I think the residents need to be heard with this matter, because he's had hearings at a lot of these school meetings they've had, but there hasn't been enough explanation of what he's trying to propose. But that's left up to the local city councils and the mayor to decide what they want to do with that, so. But I've got concerns because we represent the residents. They vote us into office, and that's the bottom line. And if the residents are not in support of that, we have to answer to the will of the residents. So that's the bottom line with that. Thank you.
Did anybody else have a question for the senator? Well, terrific. Well, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Okay, good to see you. And my card's up here too if anyone needs to get a hold of me.
We also have a contested race for representative in the general court. So if I could have Representative Josh Cutler and Vince Cogliano come forward.
Side?
Either side. So if we're going in reverse order as you appear on the ballot, so Mr. Cogliano, if you could make your opening statement, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm Vince Cogliano. I live in Pembroke. I grew up there. I graduated from Silver Lake. I've worked a lot of businesses, but grew up with a family farm, and we still have the family farm. We grow pick-your-own strawberries, and we also grow Christmas trees. That's a very rewarding thing to do. You make people happy in the summer, and you make them happy at Christmas time as well. I went on to college after serving in the military on the GI Bill. I served for 6 years in Pembroke as a selectman, and I was a founding member of the committee that negotiated for and helped Pembroke form an autonomous school system, and it's been a really good thing for the town in so many ways, and I'm very proud of that. As a businessman, I started several companies, including one that was named a Defense Department Contractor of the Year in 1989. I'm proud to be endorsed by Plymouth County Sheriff Joseph McDonald, DA Tim Cruz, by Jeff Deal, State Representative. You all know Jeff. He started the Tank the Gas Tax movement. I got signatures, went to events with Jeff, held signs. We're all very proud that that measure passed and protected the will of the people who don't want taxes raised in the dark with no vote. As I used to say when I would speak on the issue, there's only one sign in the New England Patriots locker room. It says, do your job. If you want to raise taxes, legislature, do your job and stand up and do it. Don't hide. I'm honored to have the endorsement also of Governor Charlie Baker, a man I both respect and admire. Governor Baker was elected, and voters knew the system was rigged before he was elected. The fix was in for every bill. Let's not kid ourselves. Governor Baker has accomplished more in 2 years than any governor I have ever seen. I don't think anyone will doubt that. He needs help because the first 2 years are always the fun years for an elected governor in Massachusetts. What's going to happen over the next 2 years is an effort to stonewall him, an effort to block the things he wants to do, an effort to get rid of him because he stands in the way of higher taxes. With all due respect to Senator Brady, we do have a spending problem in Massachusetts, not a revenue problem. We're reaching to taxpayers' pockets at every turn. And I haven't heard anyone say they're against paying taxes. What they're against is not knowing where the money is going, how it's being spent, is it being spent wisely, and is it reaching the very people that it's intended to reach and help. So that's why I'm running, is to help Governor Baker. I love what he's doing. He deserves support. He's going to need it over the next couple of years. Without Governor Baker, we may never have had a comprehensive opioid bill, or a plan to improve public transportation, or real leadership at the DCF, or bills to improve education, streamline local government, or a plan to help grow the economy and create jobs. Because I can tell you, knocking on doors, you can tell me all day long the economy is better. Nobody believes it. None of the folks out there who are answering their doors believe the economy is better. They're terrified. If they lose their job, the only job they'll find the next time around is 30 hours a week at an hourly rate, and they won't be able to support their families. We can do better, but we need to be business friendly. The first step is having a governor who is business friendly. As a guy who started businesses and employed people, I know that if you have a bad situation where people don't have confidence in the leadership, that they'll pass bills that won't hurt your business. I always knew the legislature was going to pass a lot of bills having to do with business. I knew not one of them would help my business. We need change on Beacon Hill. I ask for your support.
Thank you very much. Representative Cutler.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Keeley. All of you. It's great to see such a big audience here. I think this is the biggest crowd we've had in my years doing this, so thank you. Thank you to the Republican and Democratic town committees for sponsoring this, and thank you to my opponent, Vince. Thank you for your service to our town, to our nation, and also, on a more humorous note, thank you for not selling your Christmas trees quite this early in the season, because that is always my pet peeve. But my name is Josh Cutler. I'm the current state representative here in the 6th Plymouth district, which is Pembroke, Duxbury, and Hanson. And I actually walked here from my small business that I own here in Hanson, right down in Hanson Center. I'm very proud of the work we've done the last 2 years. Like Washington, D.C., here in Massachusetts, we do have divided government. We have one party controlling the executive branch and the other party controlling the legislative branch. But the comparison sort of stops there, because here in Massachusetts, we've been able to get a lot of tremendous pieces of legislation done by working together in a path of consensus and cooperation. Major economic development bill, major veteran housing bill, major bill on clean energy. And we've done it on an almost unanimous basis in many occasions. And that's because we have a reputation for working across the aisle, building consensus, and really getting things done. And my opponent mentioned Representative Deal, who's a Republican and works just across the town in Whitman. And we put aside our differences and we work together. We get things done. And one of the things that I'm very proud of having done over the past 2 years is to help lead a coalition of 70+ lawmakers, again on both sides of the aisle, to make changes to our school Chapter 70 formula, our funding formula, in a way that directly benefited our communities. It was a change in the minimum per pupil increment, which went from $25 to $55 per pupil, more than double. And again, we did that in a bipartisan way. I was proud to lead that coalition, and that directly is going to benefit everyone here who's a parent, who's sending their children to school, or who's a taxpayer. For Whitman Hanson, it means an extra $137,000 we wouldn't necessarily have otherwise had. For my neighbors over in Pembroke, it would be $108,000. For Duxbury, about $107,000. So a real significant change for the better that we've been able to effectuate the last 2 years. One other thing I wanted to mention, folks, we have a terrific Hanson Senior Center here, as we do in Pembroke and Duxbury as well. One of the things we've done is I'm a member of the Elder Caucus, and I know that Vince and I look alike with the gray hair. He's got a couple years of me, but I actually
I think you're older than me.
But yeah, I've had gray hair since I think I was a selectman many years ago. But so I'm a member of the Elder Caucus, and we've worked really hard to make changes to what's called the Formula Grant, which provides funding to our local councils on aging. And again, working in conjunction with the legislature and the governor, we're able to increase that from $8 to $10 per senior. So that made significant difference. Also, I'll just mention the ponds. Done a lot of work on ponds, trying to bring resources down to our communities to help clean up our ponds. We got some funding in last year's budget, and that has already been put to good use, actually. Over in Oldham Pond, they have been treating for blue-green algae, so that pond is now cleaner thanks to the funding that I was able to secure along with Senator Brady and my colleague, Senator DiMacedo. Got $20,000 in the budget for Wampatuck Pond for cleaning, and I'm running out of time. $30,000 for Camp Kewanee as well, for improvements at Camp Kewanee. So a lot of positive things that we're able to do. I'm not going to touch about them all. Restoring weekend commuter rail service. Hopefully we'll get some questions about some of these that I'll be able to bring up. But again, it's truly an honor to serve. If you like what I've been doing the last 2 years, I'd love to continue doing it for 2 more, and I'd be honored to earn your vote on November 8th. Thank you.
Thanks very much. All right, I'm sure there's plenty of questions out in the audience. So, all right, in the order that I see them, sir.
My name is Don Bryant. To Mr. Cutler, just quickly, what are you doing to relieve the financial burden placed on taxpayers to provide benefits for those who are here illegally?
Okay. So, thank you for the question, Mr. Bryant. We have, so last section, actually, this came up quite a bit in my first, thank you, Mike, in my first term, when we had a lot of issues with EBT cards. You may recall that was in the news quite a bit. And I was on a committee called the Post-Audit and Oversight Committee, a House committee that does investigations, and we actually brought the folks from the EBT, from the Department of Transitional Assistance, into the State House to question them about their programs. I actually hosted a forum right over in Pembroke with the Commissioner of the Department of Transitional Assistance to pose questions to her about what changes were being made to make sure we were fixing some of the flaws in the system that were allowing people who shouldn't have been getting EBT cards to get them. So we made a significant number of changes. I wouldn't say it's a perfect system right now, but we made a lot of progress, I would say. Currently, if you are not a legal resident of Massachusetts, you can't qualify for you can't qualify for SNAP benefits or cash assistance, TFDC, SSI. I actually brought a chart here, but I'd be happy to share with you. So I think we made a lot of strides. We passed a bipartisan welfare reform bill last term as well that made a number of changes. tightening eligibility. We instituted and actually created a new fraud subunit within the Department of Transitional Assistance to try to sniff out any kind of instances of fraud. We've tightened the EBT restrictions. We put photos on the EBT cards. I actually took a lot of criticism from some of my colleagues on the left, from some fellow Democrats who weren't happy with my vote on that, but I felt like it was something important we needed to do to try to cut down on that. So we now have photos on EBT cards. We've put limits on what EBT cards can be used for, all kinds of details. I can't really, I'm getting out of time, Mr. Bryant, but if you would like to chat more about it, I'd be happy to provide you with more of that information. So thank you for the question, though.
Thank you. Mr. Cogliano.
If I asked everyone in the audience here to give me your house keys so I could come in your house at any time, eat your food, share your money, take a beer out of your refrigerator, sleep it there if I wanted to, how many of you would give me your keys? I don't see any hands. And yet, when people like me say the first step on solving these problems is to close the border and take away the keys, they say, well, you're against immigration. You hate people who are coming into this country. And that's such a silly, empty argument. All I want to do, just like you do, and why you won't give me your key, is you want to make sure that people are invited into your home. And that's all I want. The first step to solving these problems is to close the borders and decide who comes in and who doesn't. No one here illegally should be getting benefits. They shouldn't get driver's licenses. They just shouldn't. They take their chances when they get here. They're part of the underground economy. And unfortunately, our business climate is so bad here that a lot of employers like to pay people low wages off the books because they don't want to pay all of the benefits. So we encourage this to happen. In Europe, with open borders, most of their economy now is going underground. It's a terrible tragedy over there. So besides not giving them benefits, driver's license, etc., let's start with the first step. Just like you wouldn't let me into your house uninvited, we need to secure the borders so that we can decide who comes into this country. And we need immigrants. There's no doubt about it. I just want to know who they are, and I want to say yes or no to the ones we don't want. That's all.
I saw a question in front.
Yep. Michael Jones, 429 Elm Street. Mr. Cogliano, question to you. My child has 26 kids in his kindergarten class this year. As you know, revenue going to our school district is not getting any better. What's your opinion on charter schools for this coming election?
I'm for charter schools. I think charter schools, we always talk about the money. You know, you got two sides talking about, well, the money doesn't follow the student. Well, the money does follow the student. There's one side, the Globe and the Herald seem to both agree, as the Lowell Sun does, that for 3 years the town keeps the money without the student being there so that they have the money there and they have time to wean off of it. But competition is good for everybody in anything, and it's good in public education as well. And charter schools are still public education. The fact of the matter is, we have a lot of children in the cities that their only way of getting out is to be educated and to get good educations. And frankly, I don't think anyone can say they're getting that now. The company that we were Defense Department Contractor of the Year was a company that worked with historically black colleges and universities in America. They're terribly underfunded. The students who go there don't have the resources that other colleges do. Those students don't always get accepted to the Georgia Techs and the Purdues and MITs and that. If they had better education, they might, and they could. So I think that you know, it's not all about the money. It's about bettering education. And frankly, if it means we have to appropriate more money for education so that your kids and everyone's kids have choice and that public schools get better, as I said the other night in the debate when Josh and I talked, I'd be thrilled if we had no need for private schools or charter schools. I wish the level of public education was so high and that it was so good that none of us would feel the need to have competition. We're not there yet. I hope we get there someday, but if it means increasing funding, I'm for that.
Representative Cutler.
Thank you. The good question. This is one area where there was a difference of opinion between me and Vince. So I'm a no on that question. I think number one, just a couple things. We've actually, it never feels like it. There's never enough money, of course. And serving on the school committee, you obviously know that firsthand, Mike. We have this year put a record amount of local aid. This is the most local aid that's ever been given to our cities and towns and to Hanson in the history of the Commonwealth. Not to mention the fact that we did increase that formula. We made that change to that formula, which directly benefited more suburban communities like Whip and Hanson. So things are moving in the right direction. Obviously, we need more funding. You guys do the best job you can with the limited resources that you do have. If I said to you, I'm going to take $250,000 out of your budget, would you be very happy with me?
No.
No, but that's what's happening now with the way that our charter school system is set up. So question 2 is not anti-charter school in my view. I have visited the South Shore Charter School when it was over in Hull. I was there many times. We have a charter school in Plymouth, and I think they're for some kids that is a great alternative. Just like a VOTEC school is a great alternative. Just like the Independence Academy over in Brockton, which is a recovery high school, which I just visited the other day. Actually, there's a former Hanson resident who's now the principal there. Those are all important alternatives to our traditional public school. They're not a replacement, though. And I think that's the key distinction here. We're not looking for charter schools to eventually replace public schools. At least I don't believe that. Maybe there's some folks who do want to do that. I think that's a mistake. So I think we can say we can support and appreciate the charter schools that are currently here. And in fact, we haven't actually reached the cap. So this ballot question isn't necessary now. There's still, I believe, about 15 schools that could be approved under the current cap. So there's no urgency here to lift the cap. This ballot question would take this much, much further than even the legislation that we were considering this past session. It would allow unlimited, nearly 12 new charter schools every year. Not once, every year. Okay, so that could mean eventually we'd simply have more charter schools than public schools, and maybe that's, again, what some people want. But I don't think that's what we want. I don't think if you're a Whitman Hanson parent, taxpayer, you want to see us continue to lose that funding, okay? It just makes sense. If the size of the pie stays about the same, and you're divvying it up into more and more smaller pieces, what's going to happen? Just do the math. Now, Vince is right, and the governor's right, that we have reimbursed local school districts for part of the loss. So when your son or daughter goes from Whitman Hanson to the local charter school, their per pupil funding follows them, okay? And whatever it is, about $12,000, it changes per district. Now, that's fine, that's appropriate, but think about it, if you're running the Whitman Hanson schools and you lose a kid to the charter school, can you cut 1/25 of a teacher, or 1/25 of the energy bill, or 1/25 of your contractual obligations? No, you can save a little bit of money here and there on your marginal cost for textbooks and other things. I'm getting this sign from Sean that I should wrap up, but no, so I think there's a lot, we could talk about this probably all night. I don't think this ballot question is right. I would urge all of you, even if you're not voting for me, to vote no on 2. We can come back and still come up with a solution that will allow more charters in urban areas that really need it. It's not the right idea for us. Thank you.
All right. Another question. Mr. Young.
So how do you stand on question 4, which is the legalization of marijuana question? And I'll just throw this question out because I think it's a good one. Who are you voting for President of the United States and why?
Was that directed at Representative Cutler?
2 questions, or is that a combo question?
We always give accommodations to Selectmen Young.
Yeah, and Bruce's. We would expect no less, Mr. Young. So is that to me first?
Sure.
All right, so question 4 is the legalization of marijuana. And again, I think this is an area we do agree. Actually, I'm a no vote on question 4. I think that's a bad move for Massachusetts for a lot of reasons. Again, we could probably talk about this for a long time. I just participated in a forum on this over in Pembroke with Pembroke Titans Against Drugs with District Attorney Cruz and Chief of Police. Again, you could, a couple of the biggest issues, I guess I would say, with question 4, one is to do with the edibles, okay? Because it's going to allow the legalization of edibles with marijuana, with THC in it. And even though the law says it would be, 21 years or older, we all know that's going to make it easier for kids to get marijuana, easier. I mean, frankly, it's going to be marketed in a way that it's going to be more attractive to kids. You're going to have gummy bears and different kinds of products with THC in it. And if you look at what happened in Colorado, it's just undeniable that more is going to get in the hands of kids. And it's going to be harder. It's going to be harder and harder to know, am I drinking, or is this little candy I have in front of me have THC in it or not? And at least with alcohol, you can generally know, unless it's a brown paper bag, I guess. So that's one big issue. The other big issue, it has to do with the revenue. People say, oh, this is great, we'll legalize it, we'll get all the revenue, it'll solve all our fiscal problems, great, yada, 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 yada. look at the details, okay? In Colorado, the tax that's in effect now is about 27.9%. What they're proposing on this ballot question is 10%, okay? Plus a 2% local option that would only kick in if the local townspeople voted it. So a significant difference in revenue, okay? So it's not gonna even pay for the costs that it's gonna saddle us with. So I think it's a bad move. I think, you know, I'm not someone who would say marijuana is so much worse than alcohol. I mean, in many ways, alcohol is worse, but that's not the question that's before us on the ballot. It's whether or not to legalize marijuana. I think we should wait. There's no urgency here. We have already legalized medical use of marijuana. We have already decriminalized marijuana. No one is going to jail for just marijuana possession. The sheriff can attest to that. Anyone who needs marijuana for medical reasons has access to it. So let's wait. Let's see what happens in Colorado in 5 or 10 years. If the data, you know, supports it, we can take another look at this. So I don't think it's good news for Massachusetts, and I'm supporting Secretary Clinton. Thank you.
I was going to say, you know, don't feel pressured to say how you're going to vote on
That's all right.
the election, but Secretary Clinton on this side. Mr. Cogliano.
Yeah, this can be very brief. Of course, I'm against 4. I think we have enough issues in our society right now that we don't need to be adding another one. You know, the edibles is certainly a big issue. So many other things associated with this bill. The Harvard study that was done recently, if everyone is pretty attuned to that, it does, you know, come up with some pretty startling facts, especially the use of marijuana and the effects it has on the brains of young people and their outlook for the future. It's not a good thing. And like I said, the argument of people saying, well, it's not as bad as alcohol. Okay, let's say alcohol is bad. Let's say it's the worst thing in the world. Why add something just as bad to an existing problem that people are having a hard time managing? It simply doesn't make sense. So, you know, I'm definitely against it. Colorado is on its way to a huge failure. You know, I have friends who live in Colorado. They say it's changed so much. People are afraid to drive because incidents of accidents have risen so much with people, you know, on marijuana and driving. As for who I'm voting for president, we have Supreme Court justices being chosen that will tip the balance of power on the Supreme Court for many years into the future. We have a lot of difficult situations in this country right now, and we need change. And I've said this before, the fact of the matter is, nobody is happy with their representation in Washington, be it Democrat or Republican. It just isn't happening. They're not listening to us. They're listening to each other. They're part of a club. They're doing everything to get themselves reelected, but they're not looking out for us. And that's what people feel. So when people say, well, gosh, how could Donald Trump ever get the nomination? They got it because people aren't listening in Washington. If they had listened, maybe other people would have come forward and run. But they didn't. And I support Donald Trump. He needs to protect the Supreme Court. And he needs to get the economy working better for everybody, because the economy is in terrible condition, regardless of what politicians will keep on telling you. When you talk to people, they're not happy with the economy. The only people I hear that are happy with the economy are people who are elected officials. They're happy, but nobody else is. I'm with Trump.
All righty. So we probably have time for one question, maybe 2, but yes, ma'am.
Jen Flanagan, I'd like to know your positions on the bathroom bill. And Vince actually already answered my second question. Do you feel we have a spending problem or a revenue problem in the state, Josh? I did a little bit of homework when I was working to help repeal the gas tax bill, which you in fact voted into law on your final vote. Your first vote, you rejected it. And I learned that Massachusetts has the second highest road repair cost per mile, second to New Jersey in the entire country. And I'd just like to hear your comments. Thank you.
Sure, thank you, Ms. Fleming. I think there might have been 4 different questions, but I'll try my best to answer them all. And so first off, the bathroom bill, I believe that's a misnomer. My position is actually the same as Governor Baker's, who signed that bill into law, and I was proud to do that as well. On the gas tax, you're right, I voted in favor of a 3-cent increase in the gas tax. I'm happy to do so. I think that money is being put to good use. If you've driven through Pembroke Lake, you've noticed all the major improvements that are going on there. People are going to have sidewalks that weren't going to have it before. People throughout our South Shore were going to benefit from that. Not to mention that, I mean, the gas tax, actually, if you look at the actual gas tax from when it was voted, I think there was the average cost per mile per gallon was about $3.69, and now it's under $3, so it's actually gone down quite a bit. Just to correct the record at one bit, because I understand, and I know you're very involved in that, and I believe my opponent has mentioned this once as well, but I did want to correct the record because I think it's important that you all understand. This is a vote from last term. But actually, there was only one vote that ever happened on striking and indexing, which is the subject of the ballot question. And I voted to strike that and to remove that from the bill. I have a copy of the roll call actually here as well. I voted along with Representative Deal and some of my Democratic colleagues and most of the Republican colleagues in trying to strike that. Because I do agree. I thought at the time raising the gas tax by a modest amount was a responsible thing to do to pay for the infrastructure that we all need. And I did also think that in the future, when we need to do it again, I'll have to take a vote, and I'll take a tough vote, and you guys are going to hold me to account on that. And if I don't vote the way you think I should, then I'll answer you. I'll answer to you at the ballot box. But I do think it is important that we have to, as a legislator, make that decision. That's why I voted that way. But I think back to the bigger picture of infrastructure. We're suffering. We're not investing in our infrastructure, and we're paying the price. We see it everywhere. But this session, we've been able to make some strides. In fact, just in this room recently, I hosted a meeting with representatives from Senator Warren's office, your town administrator here in Hanson, to talk about MassWorks, to talk about federal grants and ways that we can try to help the town to qualify for funding at the state and federal level, to do things to try to help with the Plymouth County Hospital project, things like Route 27 South Hanson redevelopment. We just had the Lieutenant Governor, Karen Polito, a Republican, in this room, I think it was Tuesday. Here, Bruce was here talking about this very subject, about MassWorks and about infrastructure and the importance of that. And in fact, Hanson signed a community compact with the Baker Polito administration. And if you were there, the Lieutenant Governor was very complimentary towards the legislature and how we had worked with her and been a partner to her. So she appreciated the bipartisanship and the partnership that we have provided. So I'm proud of my vote, and I wouldn't change it. But I think it's important that we do acknowledge that we have some infrastructure needs in this Commonwealth, and we got to meet them. So thank you.
Mr. Cogliano.
First of all, no, I'm not for the bathroom bill. I don't agree with everything the governor does. I think he's doing great things, but this is one place where we part company. I talk to a lot of people, and maybe they all misunderstand, but they believe that, first of all, there wasn't a real reason to enact this. There was no hue and cry that people were being denied going to the bathroom. I never ran into anybody who ever had that problem. But most parents I talk to believe that it puts their children at potential risk. And I don't think that having this approved outweighs the potential risk. And we're saying, well, there'll be penalties to the people who might do this. Well, that's after the fact. This was a bill that most people feel we didn't need. It was one of those things like the opioid thing, or I'm sorry, the marijuana. We could have studied it for another 10 years, right? Then we could have found out. The other question was
whether you feel the state has a spending
or a
revenue.
That's an easy one. George Mason University does a study every year. And the one that came in a year or two ago, we're one of only 2 states that our liabilities are larger than our assets. Think about that. I've started several small businesses. I've had to work with venture capitalists to raise money, people on Wall Street, who are all liberal, by the way. I've had to deal with banks. And if I walked in with a business plan with any of those people and said, my assets are lower than my liabilities, they would have said, Mr. Cogliano, rather than getting a loan, you should be seeking protection in the bankruptcy courts. And that's where we are here. Sure, we need infrastructure. We need a lot of things. But we are, in fact, really have spending priorities that are misguided. And we've built many, many jobs in Beacon Hill and in the state which we're now in the process of cutting to try to make the budget gap up. But we need to manage our state better. We really do. When your liabilities are bigger than your assets, you're in trouble. Now we want to add infrastructure, and that's a great thing. We need it. There's no doubt about it. But again, why is our cost per mile to fix roads so high? If it were lower, could we fix more roads? Does that make any sense? If we watched it, if we were better at managing it, would it be better for all of us? I think so.
Alrighty, this discussion could probably go on all night, but we have a couple of other offices to get to before we finish up. So we'll move to closing statements. So, Representative Cutler, you have 1 minute.
Okay, 1 minute, I gotta go quick. Thank you all very much. Thanks for the questions, folks. I appreciate them. I know when you're the challenger, you know, everything needs to be changed, but there's a lot of good things you guys should be proud of here in Massachusetts. You know, our unemployment rate is 3.9%, lowest it's been since before the dot-com boom. Our bond rating is the highest it's ever been in our nation, in our country's history. Rainy day fund, we've been putting more money back into it. It's over $1.4 billion. If you took Massachusetts schools and measured them against the world, not just the nation, we would actually rank 4th in the world in reading and 9th in the world in math. So we've done some really tremendous things here in the Commonwealth, much that we can be proud of. Here at the local level, I've worked very hard to be a strong advocate for Hanson. We've done a lot of good things. I don't have time to, I'm already out of time, but I'd be honored to earn your vote. If you want to learn more about me, my website is joshcutler.com, and I thank you very much for coming out this evening.
Mr. Cogliano.
Thank you for having me here. I've really enjoyed this. It's nice to get questions from the audience. I'm running yes because I think we do need change. By the way, one of the reasons why we have such a high bond rating, bonds are set by the ability to pay back, and when you have the ability, because you're controlled by a one-party system, to raise taxes to pay for the bonds, bond rating agencies love you. So that's a rather backward way to look at it. If we weren't so willing to raise taxes, our bond rating wouldn't be quite as good, but we'd all be better off, because we wouldn't be spending and bonding so much money needlessly. We do have a spending problem here in Massachusetts. We need to correct it. We need to work on the issues that are important. We keep hearing like the millionaire's tax that Democrats put on the ballot, you know, the constitutional amendment. And yes, I know Charlie Baker approved it too. Why fight it? He knows it's not going to pass. As long as he's governor, it will not pass. We need more Republicans on Beacon Hill to offset the out-of-control spending that the left wants to do. I'd appreciate your vote on November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you very much to both of you. Next, if we could please have the candidates for Plymouth County Commissioner come up. And as they make their way up, I'll state that in reverse order on the ballot, we have Lincoln D. Heineman, Daniel A. Pilata, and Greg Hanley.
I don't know, Greg went.
Oh. We're missing Greg. Here's Greg.
Cookies were good.
So now we have our full slate. So again, we'll have a 3-minute opening statement from each of the candidates, and going in reverse order, we will start with Mr. Heineman.
Thank you, Sean, and good evening to everyone. My name is Lincoln Heineman. I'm running for Plymouth County Commissioner. And thank you so much for having this great forum tonight, and this, so far anyway, and I hope continuing to be a very respectful exchange of ideas. It's certainly a nice, I think, refreshing change from what's happening on the national level. A little bit about myself. I am a lifelong Plymouth County resident, product of the Scituate schools, grew up in Scituate and have been there for most of my life. I began my career working for a long time and well respected on both sides of the aisle, State Representative Frank Hines from Scituate and Marshfield, who represented Scituate and Marshfield, and worked on a whole series of issues and again, in a bipartisan way with folks across the aisle. Later on, worked for the State Inspector General's office, rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse in government, and as we know, there's plenty of that, and achieved several relatively high-profile cases, finding that fraud and identifying it and stopping it. It went on to earn my Master's of Business Administration, and want to bring all that experience to bear for the county. I have volunteered on the local level for the Situate Advisory Committee, helping to manage that budget, helping to balance our budget at the municipal level in Situate. One of the things that the other folks here certainly know is that the county, it's our regional government, but it's starved of funds. There's about approximately 90%, a little bit less than 90% of the fees and taxes that all of us pay at the Registry of Deeds go back to the state. In the context of the state budget, that's nothing. That's a sort of a rounding error. In the context of the county government, the level of government that's closer to all of us, and at times more responsive to all of us, it's a big piece. And our regional government isn't able to do a lot of things that it could effectively well because it's starved of these resources. One of the things that the current commissioners have worked on, which I applaud, but I think we could go so much farther in, is Lyme disease. We have a Lyme disease epidemic going on the South Shore, Plymouth County, and approaching it in a regional way is something that I think we must do and we have to do, and actually combating it effectively and more aggressively. So thank you again. Look forward to your questions and ask for your vote on November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pilata.
Thank you. Thank you to Hanson for having us again. My name is Dan Pilata. I'm chairman of the Plymouth County Commissioners. I've been chairman for the past 4 years. And Commissioner Hanley and I, who are at extreme opposites on the political spectrum, inherited a pretty dire situation 4 years ago. The commissioners before us did not heed any normal sense of fiscal responsibility, and it's taken Greg and I, with the help of Sandy, 4 years just to get the county to be able to pay its bills. Plymouth County should have been bankrupt the day that I took office 4 years ago. They were selling land, they were selling buildings, they were selling everything they could to balance the budget. They had fraudulent revenue projections, and it was just hack-a-rama down there with jobs and everything else. In the 4 years that Greg and I have been commissioners, and I'm not asking you to vote for Greg, but I'd be remiss to say that we didn't do it together. We cleaned up the mess, and we did it the hard way. We cut people. We cut things that weren't needed. We reduced things that were unnecessary. And I'm happy to report that this year, for the first time in a decade, Plymouth County will have an audited set of books. It took when we got in there were 10 years of no audits. We've done 14 years of audits. And this year, at the end of this audit, you're going to find that the Plymouth County Commissioners have a $400,000 surplus for the first time in a decade. A lot of hard work, and something I'm proud of. I've been working for 4 years in a fire drill. I don't know what it's like to govern without a fire drill. I want to be returned to be able to do the things that the cities and towns need. The Lyme disease that Lincoln's talking about, the commissioners have already applied for a grant on. If we get the grant, we can go forward with that. The county is not supported by the state. 89.675 cents of every dollar that when you sell your house, transfer tax goes to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, not to us. It goes to Pittsfield, Worcester. It goes to Essex County. It goes everywhere but here. So we want to get those monies back. In doing so, we filed pieces of legislation. And the first two pieces that we got through was eliminating the sheriff's liability for the retirees from the sheriff's department that transferred to the state. And the second piece was to allow us to have a savings account. Can you believe we're not allowed to have a savings account? Well, as of a month ago, we got a bill passed and signed by the governor that allows us to have a savings account, and I don't have to spend the surplus. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Hanley.
Thank you very much, and before I begin my remarks, I'd like to thank Karen Barry, if she's still here, for those wonderful cookies. She knows that's my weakness. I think she was trying to throw me off my game, but I have a nice cup of coffee and I'm ready to speak. To echo the sentiments that Dan expressed, when we got into office, the cupboard was bare. Not to perpetuate the food argument, but I haven't had dinner yet, so so thanks again for those cookies. When we got there, it was in disarray. The previous county commissioners wanted to end county government. In fact, they started a charter commission that was on the ballot. People were elected to it. There was a study done, and it was determined that it would be cheaper to keep the county open because of all the liability and all the debt that it would take to close the county. So in essence, you would be paying out the same money you were paying, but you'd be receiving those services. I'm reminded when we get into office of a saying that John Kennedy spoke of when he was dealing with the Russian crisis back in the 50s, and it had to do with science and math and how the Russian students were surpassing the American students in that area, and therefore it was a threat to our national security in the advancement of the nuclear era. And what he said was, it's not the Republican answer that we should seek, nor the Democratic answer, it's the right answer. And he talked about accountability. And I can remember when Dan and I were debating back WATD, and it was over, and he claimed that we're going to show Washington what to do when a Republican and a Democrat work together. And I can tell you now, folks, that of the hundreds of votes that we've taken, there's only been one vote that we were not on the same page on. And that was a philosophical vote, and it had to do with a labor issue. But suffice it to say, we were able to put our differences aside and really wrestle the issues that plague Plymouth County. And how did we do that? We did that by partnering with our legislative delegation. We both worked with Democrats and Republicans and had 7 pieces of legislation. We were fortunate to get 4 of them passed. The most significant one was a maintenance of effort. When the jail was taken by the state, $110 million asset that the residents of Plymouth County paid for. And when the jail was taken over by the Department of Corrections, they left behind the legacy costs. And the legacy costs were those retirement and OPEB liabilities that were left behind. So previously, each generation would pay for the last generation's benefits with their sweat equity and make the contributions. And what would happen in this scenario was there was no one to kick the can down the line. You had to pay that. It was $32 million. Now think about that, $32 million divided by 27 communities. That's roughly $1 million or more for each community that this group of county commissioners, and it's 3 minutes, but this group of county commissioners saved for you. What does that mean to your community? Police truck, fire truck, DPW, snowplow, that's what it meant. And I hope someone asks a question about that, because I'd like to go into that a little bit more.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Do we have a question for any one of the candidates or the all 3? Oh, I have one in the back. Could you please come in the room?
How did that work out, Mr. Hanley? Who paid for $32 million?
Well, we were very lucky in, again, working with our delegation. All the reps and senators in Plymouth County signed on to the issue. And we were able to forgive that debt by adding 10 cents per every transaction at the Registry of Deeds. Dan spoke of the cut that we get. It's just about 10 cents on every dollar. We were able to piggyback 10 cents on every dollar, so now that the amount is roughly 20 cents goes to the retirement of that debt, and it'll be done by 2024. So that has no impact, it has 0 impact on the taxpayers in this community. But we would not have been able to do it if it weren't for Republicans and Democrats alike. Vin DiMacio, Matt Muratori, Josh Cutler, Jim Cantwell, Senator Brady, they all got together, and it was actually Rhonda Nyman as well, the whole delegation. And so the things, and that's just one piece of legislation, we'll talk about it more, but it's so important to work with people that are up in the legislature, because we're not a revenue generating body. We can't raise and appropriate taxes. We give you an assessment, and it comes out to about $2.09 per resident that you pay for the services of the county.
Mr. Plata?
Well, I could echo what Greg had to say. In reality, the Commonwealth's picking it up. The shift didn't increase the taxes, it's just less that went to the Commonwealth, and for a temporary stay to pay off the liabilities of the Sheriff Department employees. They essentially took, as the county treasurer said over and over, they took the house and left us with the mortgage. It took us 5 years to get that resolved and a lawsuit. A lot of hard work, and if we had lost that, it would have immediately been transferred to each city and town per the retirement rules. So we're pretty proud of that. We're proud of a lot of the things. We're not in a sexy government. The county, no one's jumping up and down for Plymouth County. We're the question on WATD, should you get rid of us? But we actually have a function to do, and if we don't do the function, it's going to go to the state. And if you look at what has happened with other agencies that have gone to the state, it costs a tremendous amount of money to operate under the state than it does under a county. So hopefully we can turn it around in the next 4 years, make it so that we're not the bastard child of government, but we're something you can be proud of, because what we've accomplished in 4 years is truly amazing, and I can only imagine what we're going to accomplish in the next 4 years.
Mr. Heineman?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I give a lot of credit where credit is due to the existing commissioners for righting the ship. What we need now, I think, is to take a new proactive approach to across the aisle in a bipartisan way to make sure that the county is not just meeting its obligations, which it is now, which is great, but also more proactively providing the services. We talked about Lyme disease, and again across the aisle in a bipartisan way, there are many folks agree that there are a whole host of services that could be provided more effectively, more efficiently on a regional level. We have 26 towns in the city of Brockton, and each town in the city of Brockton is attempting to address it on its own. Again, across the political aisle, there are so many other things that we could do, and that's I think I could bring my experience to bear to help achieve some of those things.
Terrific. Any other questions? Well, seeing none, thank you very much for. Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Moderator, any closing?
My mistake. There is 1 minute for closing statements, and we will go in the reverse order. So, Mr. Hanley, please.
Well, thank you all for being here on a Sunday afternoon. I was very happy to see the Patriots win today, so it put me in a good mood. I'm the good commissioner tonight, not the bad commissioner. On November 8th, you have a choice to make. This election is very important. The progress that we've been able to make with this group of commissioners, as Dan mentioned, is enhanced by the fact that we have the first audited books since 2008. Think about that, how long it took us to get those books in order. Now that we have that in order, we'll have a bond rating, and we'll be able to create opportunities for cities and towns to present to the county commissioners capital-worthy projects that can get low-interest financing through their regional government. And that is going to be the biggest benefit to having that done. We have some programs that we have on hold until after the election, and all I can say is put your seatbelts on and tune in, because we're ready to launch. So thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you. Mr. Plata.
We didn't touch on a lot of the things that we have accomplished in the past 4 years. One of the things that we did launch this year was what we call PCOT, and PCOT is the Plymouth County OPEB Trust. OPEB is other post-employment benefits, and we have now pooled 22 municipal units together to bring all the OPEB money that you pass at town meeting together, and we're investing it as a group and getting a pretty good rate of return. Our goal is 7.5% per year. as opposed to if you invested at the local level, you're gonna get 1 or 2 or 3%. So we're trying to help out our cities and towns on that. Now that the cities and towns have tackled sick leave buyback, OPEB's gonna be the next thing, and retirement's gonna be the next thing coming down the line. As our generation pays for the sins of the previous generation, it's gonna take another decade or 2 before we get the OPEB corrected. But Plymouth County's here to help, and I would ask for all of you to vote for Pilata. I'm in the middle of the ballot. I don't bite, and hopefully you'll like Plymouth County. In 4 years, we'll come back and we'll be able to tell you a lot more we did.
Thank you. Mr. Heineman.
Thank you again, folks, for having me here this evening. On November 8th, you have the opportunity, again, as you heard from Mr. Hanley and Mr. Pilata. Yeah, we're at the bottom of the ballot, but you have the opportunity to vote for 2 county commissioners. The top 2 vote getters will be your county commissioners. I asked for one of your votes. Again, I think there are so many more things that the county can do. Again, the existing commissioners have achieved a lot in righting the ship. But one of the things that I know I can bring to bear is a new vision about other things that we can do regionally, again, that we can do in a bipartisan way. So I'd ask for one of your votes, and again, I appreciate your time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks very much. All righty, and now we have another countywide office, and that is for sheriff. So if we could have Scott Vecchi and Sheriff Joseph McDonald join me up here. All righty. Well, we'll start with Mr. Vecchi's opening statement.
Thank you, and thank you for having me here. I appreciate so many concerned voters turning out today and participating in the process. It's always good to see a sea of happy faces. My name is Scott Vecchi, and I'm the Democratic candidate for sheriff. I'm a husband, a father of 3 children. I live in Plymouth. I'm a member of the Alden and Mayflower Societies, and I have very deep roots in Plymouth. I'm currently a police sergeant for the Plymouth Police Department. I'm also a retired gunnery sergeant of Marines and combat veteran of Iraq. When I returned from Iraq, I was very fortunate the VA sent me to law school and I became an attorney as well. I have 23 years of police and corrections experience. I started my career at the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department in the House of Correction at South Bay following the closing of Deer Island. And when elected sheriff, I'll be the only sheriff who's actually been a corrections officer. As a police sergeant, I experienced firsthand the tragedy of the opiate epidemic that is upon us, and I combat it at street level on a daily basis. I've administered Narcan, I've ambu bagged and rescue breathed for overdose victims. I've helped family members work through the Section 35 process to get their loved ones into treatment. I've served Section 35 and comforted family members who were beside themselves in despair as their loved one lashed out at them for making them go to treatment. I'm running on a platform of fiscal responsibility and reform to eliminate the corrosive effect of employee campaign contributions, nepotism, patronage, and exploitation of our pension system. I've been endorsed by the State Police Association of Massachusetts, by MassCop, by the Professional Firefighters of Massachusetts, by numerous other unions as well. Prior to coming out here, I actually watched the 2004 debate, or actually it was more of a statement because Matt McDonough subbed for his father. And I watched Joe, and I missed that Joe, because that Joe railed against the same things that I'm railing against right now. That Joe lashed out at hiring friends and family members and fiscal responsibility, and lashed out at the failure to stay within budgets. And I miss that Joe. I really do. And unfortunately, those things still exist. But they don't just exist, they've multiplied manyfold. And that's why I'm running for sheriff. Because if the old Joe, if the 2004 Joe that I watched today was still here, I wouldn't have a reason to run. Thank you.
Sheriff McDonald.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for coming out and wish you a good evening. My name is Joe McDonald, and I have had the privilege of being the Plymouth County Sheriff for the last 12 years. I am a firm believer that while elections can be won, re-election must be earned. So I'm here, I'm going to tell you first the good news about what's going on over at the Sheriff's Office. I have the best staff of any Sheriff's Office in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and I dare say the United States of America. As we sit here today, we at the Plymouth County Sheriff's Office, we don't overspend budgets. We're right on budget. In fact, we have got the lowest per inmate cost of any sheriff's office in Massachusetts. And at the same time, while we're providing the highest level of community service, and you see it right here in the town of Hanson. Just 2 weeks ago, there was a violent home invasion here in town, and our K-9 units responded. They came, they helped with the apprehension, they helped gathering evidence. This was tangible, this was real. Also, you've seen our inmate work crews here in the town of Hanson. You've seen them landscape here at the town hall, do work here at the town hall. You've seen them landscape and do work at the police station. They've done phenomenal work. I'm very proud to say that, when you do that, when you are the lowest per inmate cost, the highest level of service, it's the most efficient sheriff's office in the Commonwealth. I am very, exceedingly proud of that. I want to talk a little bit about my background. I too have a 25-year history in law enforcement and law. I'm a graduate of Marshfield High School, Suffolk University Law School. I'm also a proud graduate of the National District Attorneys Association National Advocacy Center in Columbia, South Carolina, the National Sheriff's Institute in Longmont, Colorado, the Municipal Police Training Committee Basic Reserve Academy in Plymouth, and I was very privileged to be sent to the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia by the Department of Justice for the FBI Leads Academy 59th session. And I'm also proud to have graduated the 176th Command Institute at Bridgewater State University, also under the auspices of the FBI. Leadership positions as sheriff. I am the immediate past president of the Massachusetts Sheriff's Association. I'm currently working as the association vice president. I'm very proud to have been a member of the governor's opiate task force, the working group that you may remember, and had a direct hand in helping to work that legislation, to draft that legislation that was passed this past March, saving lives. Also, I am a member of the governor's Council of State Governments Criminal Justice Reform. The governor asked me to stay on and to work with another nationally renowned group. We are looking for ways to streamline and make the criminal justice system better and more efficient. I'm glad to be part of that as well. You see these things. My colleague likes to say a lot of very bad things about individuals at the sheriff's office. The budget's never been overspent. The budget's been very fiscally responsible, as I stated, the most efficient. The people that I work with are the best. There is no patronage. There is no nepotism. There is no pension abuse. There's only one of us at this table that is poised to double dip on a pension, and it's not me. Thank you.
So if we could take some questions from the audience. Any questions? Well, seeing none. Oh, yes, sir.
Clay Chase. As you know, Mr. Becky, we had a discussion last week about the vicious attacks on my daughter that were, I think, slandered and false. And you apologized. It was a little bit late. But then I see the following week, you keep attacking people. And I feel this is why we don't get people that want to run for election, because their families are going to be attacked. What are you going to do to stop that?
Mr. Becky.
Mr. Chase, sir. And as we spoke, when we spoke at the last forum, I told you that the facts that I have, the facts that are on OCPF, and all the information that was in that are facts. Right? I apologize to you because you were so offended about that, and you asked me nicely, and I took it down. And like I told you there, The facts that are on OCPF and the facts from the 2009 Inspector General audit are facts. We don't agree on them, but out of respect for you as a father, and you asked me nicely, take the video down, and I did. Everything in all of my videos are fact-based. Everything is able to be researched. The Office of Campaign and Political Finance will show $383,000 worth of campaign donations to Joe, with the majority of those coming from employees. Those are facts, sir. The facts aren't always friendly. Sometimes people are offended by the facts. And I apologize to you because I see as a father that you were upset and protecting of your daughter. But I told you last week that I stand by facts. And as far as attacks, the truth isn't always pretty. And if you're pointing out this week's video where 5 individuals made campaign contributions prior to being selected for a Corrections Officers Academy, to which nobody knows the score of the exam, I have an issue with that. And I present those facts. And again, I apologize to you because you were so offended, and I saw the natural reaction of a father protecting his daughter. You asked me nicely, and I did take it down. Does that answer your question, sir?
And if there are facts,
Well, I want to have Sheriff McDonald, I don't want to make this a debate coming from the audience, but Sheriff McDonald, please.
Thank you. John Adams stated that facts are stubborn things. And what John Adams meant by that is that you cannot change what the facts are. And it's interesting. One of us seated at this table makes a big issue about the fact that I take campaign contributions from my employees. I do that. But let me give you a little bit of the history. I had campaign contributions and great support from the employees at the Sheriff's Office, many of whom have come out tonight, before I was the sheriff. Because they are the ones in a position best to know what kind of a job the sheriff is doing. I have only one job. My opponent alleges to have 5. Check out his website. He's got 5 jobs. We seem to be the rule of 5s here. In the last decade, I have run for only one office, and that's the office that I now occupy, the Plymouth County Sheriff. My colleague here has run over the last decade 5 different times for 5 different offices and seats. And during that 10-year period has had no problem whatsoever accepting campaign contributions from state employees, county employees, municipal employees. 2.5 weeks ago, he suddenly has an epiphany. This is the worst thing in the world that I have ever seen, he says. I'm not going to take those. And he says he's going to return them all. And to his credit, he was true to his word, and he did. He's been raising money to run for the office of Plymouth County Sheriff for the last 2 years. And he returned all those contributions, or shall I say, he returned both of those contributions. There were 2 that he received in 2 years. So yes, I do have the support, overwhelming support, of the employees at the Plymouth County Sheriff's Office, because I submit to you that they are the ones who best know how the office is being run. I enjoyed that support before I was the sheriff. I continue to enjoy that support today. As to his issue with the pension system, there are no pension scams. Everything is above board. Now, prior to my arrival there, the largest pension scam in Plymouth County history was engineered by my colleague's mentor, Sheriff McDonough, the man who announced him at his kickoff, introduced him. The largest pension grab, 2 full-time jobs, all kinds of relatives, the ex-wife, cousins, his brother, on the payroll. Terrible, terrible things. I railed against that. I don't have that. I don't stand for pension scams of any kind. Everything that we do at the Sheriff's Office is above board. As far as the budgets go, he likes to make a big deal about the Sheriff's Office receives supplemental budget. It's not a supplemental budget to the Sheriff's Office. It's a supplemental budget to the state budget. It's passed that way in the legislature, and I'm glad that it is. What he neglects to mention to you is that all 14 Sheriff's Offices in Massachusetts are funded the same way. Partially at the beginning of the year, and then we have to justify our budgets at the end of the year. So we go before the Governor's Office of Administration and Finance. Then we go before both houses of the legislature, and that's how they ensure that the Sheriff's Offices are not overfunded or underfunded, and that all the expenditures are lawful and proper. So I am very proud of the work that we have done over the last 12 years. I stand behind it, and I challenge you, sir, begin telling the truth.
And again, we're under some time constraints, please. And before you get a chance to ask another question, I'd just like to see if anybody else in the audience would like to ask one. Are there any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Patrick Charette, Plymouth, Mass. My question is for Scott Becky. Over the past 12 years, first I'll say I've been an employee for the Plymouth County Sheriff's Department going on my 23rd year. For the past 12 years, I've been working for Sheriff McDonald. And in my career, I've worked for 5 separate sheriffs for the department. And all but Sheriff McDonald have not met their obligation to my payroll. All of us here that are correction officers, canine officers, or work somewhere in the Plymouth County Sheriff's Department and outside, all work for a paycheck so we can pay our mortgages and our children.
If we could have a
My question to you is, if Sheriff McDonald over the past 12 years has been the only sheriff in the past 23 years to not stop our checks, fund our overtime, not put it up as compensation and fail to pay us, you as sheriff, when that supplemental budget does not get to you in time, how would you pay the Plymouth County Sheriff's Department employees? Thank you.
Mr. Vecchi.
And my simple answer is, you make a budget you can stay within. My simple answer is that you look and see what your needs are for the entire year, and that you budget properly and stay within that budget for the entire year. Again, 2004, you made a big deal out of not staying in budgets, Joe, right?
Well, and again, we're not debating each
Okay.
other, but please.
But to answer your question, in 2004, Joe made a big deal of not staying within budgets, of not budgeting adequately, and not staying within that budget. So what we do is we forecast properly. All right, and we account for things. Granted, in every business, in every governmental agency, there is room where things don't go quite as planned. But I know at the police department, we stay within our budget. I know because I helped to write that budget, because I'm responsible for several line items of that budget. So I know that you can budget properly, and you can stay within a budget, so that you don't have to ask for 5 to 8, and granted 10 was a big year because you were transferred from the county to the state, of $13 million. But it's not short money we're talking about. It's $5 to $8 million a year that we haven't budgeted properly with. So my answer to you, from somebody that participates in a budget writing process, is budget adequately.
Sheriff McDonald.
As I stated before, facts are stubborn things. Clearly, Mr. Vecchi does not understand how it is that the sheriff's office's budget and all 14 sheriff's offices are formulated. For him to compare that to the municipal budget is not a fair comparison. They're done completely differently. For whatever reason, I don't necessarily agree with it. The way that all 14 sheriff's offices get their budget is part at the beginning of the year, and then the balance at the end of the year. And those are based on many variables, so that we work hand in glove with the Governor's Office of Administration Finance, and it's not just the Baker administration, but this goes back to the Patrick administration as well. We need to go in, we need to justify what our final budget numbers are going to be, and we can tell at the beginning of the year what they're going to be fairly closely. We don't get that money because they want to hold that back. They want to hold the sheriffs accountable. And as I said, I don't necessarily agree that this is the most efficient way to do things, but unfortunately that is reality. And I think Mr. Vecchi needs to study those budgets a little closer so he can learn what that reality is before he goes off and makes these wild claims that we're overspending the budget. Thank you.
Any further questions?
I have a question, sir. It's kind of an off-beat question. Bob Hayden.
Thank you, Mr. Hagan.
I've heard that you have a swastika tattoo on your body. If that's true, would you tell me that it is true or it isn't true? And if it is true, why would you do that?
Sir, I do not have a swastika tattoo.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and I'll add on to that. As a matter of fact, the sheriff was kind enough to file a citizen's complaint against me at the Plymouth Police Department, alleging that I have Nazi tattoos. Something that required the town to seek an outside investigator and waste thousands of dollars to tell us what we already knew. That I am not anti-Semitic, I'm not a Nazi or a white supremacist, or some other craziness that was alleged. And I'll take it a step further, because that 5-page Word document was also put into an envelope from Chandler Psychological Services and presented to the Massachusetts Police Association, fraudulently misrepresented from where it came from because I contacted Chandler Psychological Services. What I do have, sir, is a United States Marine Corps Scout Sniper tattoo. Scout Sniper that does have runic S's in it, that the United States Marine Corps Scout Snipers have used for a long time. All right, you can ask, it'd be very strange if I was a Nazi and I'm married to a Pole and my friend in the front row is a Jew, or Jewish descent if I wanted to be politically correct, okay? But the fact that it was fraudulently misrepresented to a group of police agencies, or say to a police agency, as coming from a psychological services company that exploded with dismay that it had been brought up from there. And then we didn't even look to see what it was. We're alleging I have a swastika and that I'm a Nazi. Yes, I'm a big bald guy. I ride a motorcycle. That doesn't make me some type of Nazi.
Sheriff McDonald.
Thank you. That is an interesting question and perhaps a more interesting answer. I don't know where he comes up with a psychological service, but I do know that the town of Plymouth did go because I notified the police chief that a complaint had been made by a superior officer at the Plymouth Police Department. And that officer was alleging anti-Semitic commentary. Now that officer is similarly situated to myself. He's not himself Jewish, but his family is. And he was subjected to a hostile work environment that detailed, he told stories. He told a compelling story about how Mr. Vecchi made anti-Semitic comments and offended him, and that nothing was being done at the Plymouth Police Department. He came to me with that story. I notified the chief because that's something that had to be rectified. Now for him to sit here, and you can Google this, it's out there, the runes that he's alleging are Scout Sniper are the dual lightning bolts, the SS, the protective echelon, and there are other tattoos that he has as well that must be viewed in context. But it's outrageous. It's something that needed to be addressed by the town of Plymouth. I'm happy to say that the town of Plymouth hired a private investigator in order to look into those things. And when we attempted to file a Freedom of Information request, we were denied access to that. So I can't tell you what that report determined. But I can tell you this, that what I saw and what I heard from that superior officer at the Plymouth Police Department was very disturbing to me personally. And I have to have faith that the chief handled that appropriately and the town handled that appropriately, because I can't get access to that report.
Well, I can tell you, it was exonerated, and I have an email that says I was exonerated of any wrongdoing. And that superior officer that we're speaking of and me have a long-standing issue where we don't get along very well. And we've gone back and forth, and he's repeatedly made personal attacks against me. And he saw this campaign as a venue to try and get me. And as a matter of fact, part of that investigation was that he went around the police department saying, Vecchi's gonna get his, because we don't get along.
We've departed a bit from our normal format, but I felt as though it's an unusual question as well. I think now we should move on to the closing statements. Mr. Vecchi led off, so we'll have Sheriff McDonald have 1 minute for your closing statement.
Thank you. 1 minute is not a super long period of time, so I will just close by thanking you for coming out this evening. As I stated, elections can be won, but re-election must be earned. I'm very proud of the work that we have done at the Plymouth County Sheriff's Office. We are running the most efficient sheriff's office, the highest level of service to our communities. And since 2008, we are now nationally accredited. We have been reaccredited 2 times since then, and we look forward to reaccreditation. The last time we had perfect scores. We're looking forward to reaccreditation to 2017. So we're running a great show, the best correctional facility, the best staff there is. I'm very blessed to have the job that I do, and I respectfully ask that you learn the fact, because as I stated, and let me quote Daniel Patrick Moynihan, the late New York Senator. He stated that while you may be entitled to your own opinion, you are not entitled to your own facts. So learn the facts, be an informed voter, and when you do, I ask that you vote for me on November 8th. Thank you.
Please. And Mr. Vecchi, please, your closing statement.
Unfortunately, I didn't stack the room, so my clapping isn't quite as loud. But my name is Scott Vecchi. I'm the Democratic candidate for sheriff. I truly believe that there's an excellent staff at the Plymouth County Sheriff's Department. I truly believe they toil tirelessly in anonymity in one of the most overlooked parts of the criminal justice system. And I know that because I was one, because I was a corrections officer, and I know how it is to do that job and feel so overlooked. With my experiences, with my education, I truly believe that I am the best candidate for sheriff. And I ask everybody, simply compare us side by side. Facts are pesky, facts are difficult. Go and find your facts and compare me and my colleagues side by side. And I think you'll find that I truly am the best candidate for Plymouth County Sheriff. And I humbly ask for your vote. Thank you.
And with that, I believe that brings us to the conclusion of the Town Hall Forum. Thank you all for coming out. Missed a little bit of football, but it's been a very informative evening. And I thank all the candidates for running. I thank all of you for coming out and asking your questions. And please get out and vote in November and come out and be heard. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you.
Did you think that you should get this?
I didn't.
Will you do it now?
Is it still running?
Joe Sullivan. Can you let him see?
Okay. And one final note, I would like to thank everybody at home. I would like to thank the two committees for sponsoring tonight's event, the Democratic and Republican committees of Hanson. Thank you very much.